Welcome to another exciting episode of Unleashing Your Potential with myself, Coach Toriso, the show that focuses on enhancing your way of living and unleashing your potential. Today, we are on leadership, and we are asking this question: what can we do to change Africa's leadership dilemma? Is it true that everything rises and falls on leadership? And I've got two leaders here in the studio. They will help us unpack this topic in terms of how we can change the dilemma that we are facing as Africans. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
I would like you to introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Henry Mwale. I'm an African of Zambian descent. I'm an author, I'm a pastor, I am the MD and founder of Top Media Group. I am very passionate about the continent of Africa and the peoples of this continent, and I hope to see the realization of the emancipation of our people.
Lovely. Yeah. Lovely. Welcome. Seg, please introduce yourself.
My name is Temba Kumalo. I am the editor-in-chief of the Telegram, an online and print newspaper. Before that, I worked for a couple of other newspapers. One of those, which unfortunately has lost direction, is called the Daily Sun. And I was born in White City, Jabavu, just a few kilometers from here.
I see Officer Wait.
Yeah, where actually I had the fortune of being brought up by a grandfather who was connected to a lot of people from around the continent at a time when it was not so open, so fashionable, when people had to change their identities and adopt a South African identity. So I was able to, to be exposed at that point. And it made me, as I grew up, embrace who I am. And not only seek the physical liberation, but the liberation of the mind and the spirit. For me to be part of a process that can help transform the continent.
Lovely. All right. Well, there's somebody at home who would like to actually understand that you are these leaders today, but definitely we all have a journey. We all grew up somewhere to become someone that we are today. So briefly, you can just share a bit of a journey, how you grew up and what led you to be the leader that you are today.
Yeah, growing up in Zambia at the time that I did, it was a very interesting time. We were led at that time by the founding father of the nation, Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, the late. And there was other countries at the time that were not yet liberated. I was a little boy then, but I was very much conscious of what was going on around the continent. And would hear him speak vehemently about Zimbabwe, about South Africa. He would talk about PW Botha, and we all just had this thing about Botha. We wanted to see this man and do something about the confusion that was going on around this part of the world. So you grew up understanding what was going on around you. You were conscious of what was going on around you, and that birthed something within myself. But besides that, I think as you travel, I love traveling. As you travel from one part of Africa to another part of Africa, you go from one country to another country, you begin to realize that seen one, seen them all. Africa, it's like we have certain tendencies that are as a result of a particular wiring on our minds that causes us to behave and to be in a certain way that actually we need to change. You cross the border into Swaziland or Lesotho, Zimbabwe, anywhere you go to. In fact, even if you cross the border from Santen into Alex, Africa has a story that it tells, and the story of Africa is not very good. We need to retell that story, and we need to change it, and it's our prerogative to do that.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Sir, your journey.
My journey starts from Kumalo Street 519C in Soweto in Japan. That's where it starts.
It starts, yeah.
And it was my house, where I come from, my grandfather's house. I grew up in a two-roomed house. But it was such a great political school. It was such a great political school that I was exposed to so much at a time when I was young. I remember there were publications when the liberation movements in this country were banned, and there'll be, magazines, newspapers, and I learned to distribute them at a very young age.
Okay.
They had good political content, which now explains why I ended up being a journalist, because as I was growing up, and when my grandfather was preparing certain things, I would sit and write and help him write something.
Nice.
My late aunt made me write and read my first political speech at the age of 13.
Nice.
And at the time, there were people, you know, the Boers, your PW, both and them, had sort of limited our movement. But then my late aunt said, nobody is going to limit you.
Yes,
You're going to sit down, you're going to write it, and I'm going to go over it. And I think my love for information journalism, connecting beyond where I am, the White City Chabavu, then began there. And then I went into journalism, and I've traveled through the continent, and there is no continent that is as wealthy, rich, in every sense. But we are failing to utilize all the kinds of wealth, because it's not only mineral wealth that we have. The only problem we have in Africa, we have a shortage of leaders. We have people, you know, who pass themselves off as leaders, and I'm beginning to think they're not leaders, they're aliens who just came into a body, took it over.
Okay. Well, we're talking about Africa's leadership. So maybe let's get a bit of a identification of what is leadership? What does it mean to be a leader? Before we talk about Africa, but as a leader, what does it take to be a leader?
I think being a leader, number one, the greatest ability is to listen without seeking to respond. Because if you listen without seeking a response to what the person is saying, the ability to listen makes you understand where the next person is, what their desire is, and what you can do instead of shutting down. That's what makes a great leader. Because if a leader does not listen, how then is he going to lead?
Yeah.
He cannot lead. If you can't listen, you cannot lead. And you have to know that that which you have given yourself, that this is the field where I'm going to grow and lead people. What does it require for you to grow? Do you surround yourself also with people who might even be more knowledgeable about the subject matter that you've chosen? Don't go for those who will say yes. Yes, Baba.
Yes.
No.
Wow.
That's what is killing us.
Wow. They say as a leader, you listen. You have to listen and listen and listen. We'll hear more after the break.